Hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. So still on the paper titled Natural Language Processing Based Restoration of Damaged Student Essay Archives for Educational Preservation and Fair Reassessment. So the last video we dealt with the outline, the title and the outline of the paper. So the summary that talks about the summary of each of the sections contained in the paper. So today we are moving on to the introduction. Okay, so in the introduction, these are some of the components of the component of the introduction. Okay, part of the paper. So here we talked about the background, context, causes of essay archive degradation, educational consequences, impacts on fairness and educational justice, limitations of existing solutions, need for NLP-based restoration, and of course the last part of the introductory aspect of the paper is motivation for the study. So I'll be talking about this components, okay, of the introduction. And the reason why I'm doing this is because apart from the guide I actually requested for it, so that for the upcoming researchers, so these are some of the core things, but it actually depends on the focus of your research really, but these are the basic components of an introduction. All right, so talking about the background context as the first components. So they were here we talked about the fact that many educational institutions still rely on physical examination scripts, essay projects and answer booklets are stored in paper form. All right, so yeah, that is what is obtainable, especially in developing countries, you understand. So essays, even tests, assignment, projects, and things of that nature are still stored in booklet form, so they are still physically stored. Okay, because digital archive infrastructure is often weak or unavailable. Most of our universities, especially in Nigeria, so we don't have storage facilities, digital storage facilities, such as maybe a very large memory disk and things of that nature. I could remember, I don't want to mention any university's name, but we find that the highest we have is a flash disk, 16 gig, 32 gig at most. So digital archive infrastructure is often weak, or in some institutions not even available at all. So then these major problems are common in developing and resource constrained regions, you understand. So it's important that we put this as part of this. So this one is just to expose the readers to the contextual understanding of the background of our research really. So next to that, we talked about causes of archive degradation. What are the things that actually could cause archive degradation? You understand, talking about the physics, all those information stored on in booklets and things of that nature. So what are the causes of archive degradation? So now you find that one of the causes could be that natural aging of paper and ink fading. So when booklets are stored for a very long time, they begin to some of the pages, you find that there is some ink, some of the pages ink will be faded and things of that nature, because as a result of the fact that it has been there for a very long time. So, and it could be as a result of poor storage conditions and frequent handling. There's no easy in some of these things are stored. I'm talking about the booklets, projects and things, research theses and things of that nature. There's no easy, nothing. They just compile them, year piling and things of that nature. So it could be as a result of poor storage conditions and frequent handling. And then we talked about environmental disasters such as floods. At times, the buildings, some of the offices where these things are kept, at times when there's storm or rainfall, there could be flood and fire disaster during summer and things of that nature. So these are some of the causes of archive degradation. And of course, we have also talked about accidental loss and misplacement of scripts. Some scripts are even misplaced. I wish this thing could be digitized, so all this misplacement wouldn't have been there, because we have backup and different kinds of backup and things of that nature. But this is physically stored in booklet form and things of that nature. So it's extremely difficult for us to be able to prevent this kind of degradation really. So yeah, that's one particular part of the component of the introduction as well. Then moving on, we also talk about educational consequences. When we have archival degradation, what are the consequences educationally? So it's important that we also mention these as part of the introduction, so that our readers will be able to really understand the kind of our perspective, as far as this research is actually concerned. So talking about educational consequences, we mentioned loss of official academic records, so one of the consequences would be to loss of official academic records, which could lead to difficulty in adding student appeals and reassessment. When there won't be anything, virtually you find that there won't be anything to really do a kind of thorough assessment, because it's degraded. Some of the pages in the booklets are lost and are missing. So how do you want to? So it becomes very difficult in any student appeals and reassessment. There's nothing to back it up. The student might be saying, okay, I think I scored a 20 in this particular question, but since that particular page is already missing, it's lost. So how do we back it up? So there won't be, it will be difficult, for a fair reassessment in this kind of scenario. Then we also talked about compromised academic accountability. There won't be accountability at all whatsoever, because when the official academic record is lost, how do you want to do a thorough academic accountability? So the academic accountability will be compromised, definitely. Then limited longitudinal educational analysis to analyze historical record of students. I'm talking about academic performance of students, becomes extremely difficult because official academic record is lost. So these are some of the educational consequences that we spoke about in the paper. So then, of course, we also talked about impact on fairness and educational justice. When you have degradation, official records, academic records of students are lost, then what are the impacts on fairness and educational justice? So we also incorporated that as part of our introductions. So for fair and robust, research, continuation, especially for the upcoming researchers. So students lost the right to challenge readers, because they are not custodian of these records. It's the institution. All right. So it becomes difficult when the institution cannot lay their hands on some of these records. It becomes very difficult for a student, to challenge grades, to call for remarking, to call for reassessment. It might demand reassessment, but if there's no data to actually back it up, to actually sustain that kind of reassessment, how do you go about it? So reassessment becomes impossible without scripts. Bias arises from unequal archival practices. You just maneuver things because it's not really there, and you don't want your boss to know that this thing is not in existence. So you see a lot of biases arising from unequal archival practices and things of that nature. Then threat to procedural fairness in education, definitely. So there will be threat to procedural fairness in education, because there's no official academic records of students. So so no part of the official records of students are missing, so it becomes very difficult. So it's certainly a threat to procedural fairness in education. Then moving on, we also talked about limitation of existing solutions. So now, based on research, we saw that there are a lot of limitations which we can leverage on, in our research. So manual reconstruction is slow. So talking about manual reconstruction is slow. Let's take, for instance, image-based methods. So some researchers actually looked into image-based method or techniques which focused only on visual recovery, so which will not be enough to really do a thorough reconstruction of this damaged text or this damaged student document. Then grammar correction tools alter student intent. So we are not trying to alter anything. When you are talking about reconstruction is to reconstruct back, to bring back to the original form of the document, not to generate or to alter it. But we find that from research, grammar corrections, some researchers use grammar correction tools, which eventually altered a student intent, and that is not the aim and the objective of the research actually. So then we also look at general language models, so which most of the time may hallucinate content. So in other words, the original content that we want to bring back will be different from what the reconstructed. You understand? So the document that's been reconstructed now comes out differently from the original form, so which has really a kind of negate what the originality, or negates the intention of the research actually. So these are some of the limitations of the existing solution based on our research. So we also spoke about that briefly in the introduction section. So then restoration, so now the need for NLP based restoration. Okay, restoration should recover original content faithfully, as I said earlier. It's important. So that's the main aim, the major aim of the research is to restore the original content faithfully. Don't change anything, not even a word or a character should be changed. So that's our intention. Semantic context is needed to infer missing text. Student voice and errors must be preserved, which is very important as well. Then automation is required for large scale archives. We are talking about large scale. Some of these documents have been stored for maybe 20-30 years. These are some of the things we are talking about. So automation is required for large scale archives. So in all those in the existing system wouldn't be able to handle this faithfully. So there's a need for NLP based restoration. So then the last part of the introduction section is the motivation for this study really. So we observe that the recent advances in natural language processing enable contextual reconstruction, all right, which is the motivation, is the major motivation for this research really. So talking about transformer models which can perform span level infilling, can support fair reassessment and archival preservation, and of course this leads to the proposed natural language processing based framework. So that's the motivation for this study. So you find that all these components make up our introduction section. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching the video. So the next video is going to be our literature review. So thank you very much for watching. And please, if there's any question, if there's anything you want us to add as we progress in this in trying to disable this research paper, please just add it in the comment section so that we'll be able to. So we had one or two things, and if you have any paper or research that you're actually working on, free and you have any issues in one or two places in the paper or in the research, you can just put it in the comment section so that we'll be able to do justice to. You can brainstorm, and by God's grace we are going to come up with a solution. So thank you very much once again.